In the sprawling city of Abuja, there lived a man named Michael, a hard-working and resilient young man from a humble background. His skin was the color of rich mahogany, and his strong frame showed years of labor under the Nigerian sun. He had grown up in a small village nestled in the outskirts of Abuja, where life had always been a struggle. But despite the hardship, Michael was a man of strong will, determined to build a better life for himself and his young family. His wife, Patricia, was a petite and graceful woman with deep brown eyes that carried both warmth and sadness. She too had been raised in the village, an orphan like Michael, and her life had been filled with challenges. Her dark, curly hair framed her delicate face, and though she had a quiet strength, the weight of their struggles often showed in her weary smile. Patricia and Michael had two children. Their firstborn, a bright and energetic boy named James, was always running around the small yard of their home, his laughter bringing light to their tough days. James had his father's broad shoulders, but his mother's soft features, and though his clothes were often torn and old, his spirit was lively and innocent. Their second child, a baby girl named Mary, was just a few years old, her chubby cheeks always smeared with dirt from playing outside. James loved his little sister fiercely and had already taken on the role of her protector. Life in the village was hard. Michael worked various odd jobs around Abuja, cleaning, fixing fences, helping on farms. But his earnings were barely enough to keep his family fed. They lived in a small one-room house made of mud bricks, with a rusted tin roof that leaked when the heavy rains came. Patricia took care of the house, sometimes taking on small jobs herself, like washing clothes or helping the older women in the village with their chores. But no matter how hard they worked, it always felt like they were barely surviving. One hot, dusty afternoon, as the sun began to set over the hills surrounding the village, Michael sat outside their home with Patricia, gazing at the crimson sky. James and Mary were playing nearby, giggling as they chased each other around the yard. Michael sighed, his forehead creased with worry. "I've been thinking about the city again," he said quietly, glancing at Patricia from the corner of his eye. Patricia's heart sank. She had heard this before, and each time it filled her with dread. The city was a dangerous place, full of unknowns and temptations that could lead a man astray. But she also knew that their life in the village was wearing Michael down. "How will we manage without you?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper as she watched James pick up Mary, spinning her in circles. Michael looked at his children, his heart heavy with the decision he was about to make. "I'll send money back, Patricia. It's the only way. We can't keep living like this. The city has opportunities. I've heard there are good jobs there." Patricia nodded slowly, knowing deep down that he was right. They had tried everything, but life in the village wasn't getting any better. She bit her lip, holding back the tears that threatened to spill over. "Then we'll save for your trip," she said finally. From that moment, their life became even harder. They saved every penny, cutting back on food, clothes, and anything else they could. James, being just 5, noticed the changes, but Patricia always smiled at him and said, "We're saving for something important, my son." He didn't understand, but he trusted his parents. Months passed, and eventually they had saved enough. On the day Michael was to leave for the city, the family stood outside their small home, the early morning mist still lingering in the air. James held tightly to his father's leg. "When will you come back, Papa?" he asked, his eyes wide with worry. Michael knelt down, ruffling his son's hair. "Soon, my boy. I'll come back with good news. Things will be better, you'll see." Mary, too young to understand, clung to Patricia's dress, staring at her father with her big, innocent eyes. Patricia hugged Michael tightly, her tears finally falling. "Be safe, Michael. We'll be waiting for you," she whispered. "I'll write as soon as I can," Michael promised, his voice thick with emotion. And with that, he turned and walked down the dirt path, disappearing into the distance, leaving his family behind. Michael's journey to Abuja was long and exhausting. The city was nothing like the quiet, dusty village he had left behind. Tall buildings loomed over him, the streets were crowded with people rushing in every direction, and the noise was deafening. For the first few days, Michael felt completely out of place. He wandered the city looking for work, but it seemed that everywhere he turned, doors were closed to him. Finally, after days of searching, he found a job as a cleaner in the mansion of a wealthy woman named Madame Isioma. She was the widow of a prominent businessman and was known throughout Abuja for her extravagant lifestyle. Madame Isioma was tall and regal, with smooth dark skin and eyes that gleamed with intelligence. Her hair was always perfectly styled, and her clothes were made of the finest fabrics. She carried herself with the grace of a queen, but there was a coldness about her that made Michael uneasy. The mansion was like nothing Michael had ever seen before. Gleaming marble floors, chandeliers that sparkled like stars, and furniture that looked too expensive to touch. Every day, as Michael scrubbed the floors or polished the silverware, he couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. How could some people have so much, while others like him had so little? Meanwhile, back in the village, life was becoming more and more difficult for Patricia. For the first few months, Michael sent letters and money regularly, just as he had promised. But then the letters stopped coming. Days turned into weeks, and Patricia waited anxiously for news from her husband. James, now older, began to ask questions, but Patricia had no answers. She tried to stay strong for her children, but the silence from Michael weighed heavily on her heart. Then one day, a letter arrived that shattered Patricia's world. It was from a man in the city, claiming that Michael had died in a tragic accident. The love of her life, the father of her children, was gone forever. Patricia's heart broke into 1,000 pieces, but she knew she had to stay strong for James and Mary. She continued to work as hard as she could, taking on any job she could find to support her family. James, who was now growing into a responsible young boy, took on more and more responsibilities, helping his mother care for Mary and doing whatever he could to lighten her load. But deep down, Patricia couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She knew Michael, and she couldn't believe he was truly gone. Meanwhile, in the city of Abuja, Michael continued to work diligently for Madame Isioma. Madame Isioma took a special interest in Michael. At first, he believed it was his hard work and dedication that earned him her favor, but soon he began to notice something strange. Madame Isioma always seemed to know his thoughts, bending his will effortlessly. But as time passed, Madame Isioma's hold on him grew stronger. With her dark powers, she used her wealth and influence to control him, clouding his mind and blurring his memories of home. She showered Michael with gifts and promises of success, subtly luring him into her web. Before he knew it, he had fallen in love with her, forgetting the life he once had. For 10 long years, Michael remained under Madame Isioma's spell, a prisoner in her luxurious world, disconnected from his family. But one night, everything changed. Michael had a vivid dream. He saw himself drowning in dark, murky water, struggling to breathe. As the waters rose around him, he saw a figure standing on the shore. It was Patricia, his wife, wearing a white garment, praying fervently. She stretched out her hand, calling his name, and pulled him out of the dark water. Michael gasped for air as he woke up, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. The fog that had clouded his mind for a decade suddenly lifted. He could hear Patricia's voice echoing in his mind, and he knew she had been praying for him all along. Realizing the truth, Michael was overcome with guilt and regret. How had he allowed himself to be trapped for so long? He wasted no time. That very night, he packed his belongings, leaving behind the life Madame Isioma had built for him. With a single bag in hand, MICHEAL fled from Abuja, returning to the family he had abandoned. As he arrived back in the village, the weight of his actions bore heavily on him. Michael's heart raced as he approached the home he once knew. Would Patricia and the children ever forgive him for the years of absence and betrayal? His steps were hesitant, but his heart was clear. He was finally free, and he would fight to make things right again. Patricia's heart skipped a beat as she looked up from the pot she was stirring. The familiar figure at the door was someone she had not seen in years, someone she had thought was lost forever. Michael stood there, his face worn from years of hard work, but unmistakably the man she had once loved. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling up in her eyes. "Michael," she whispered, disbelief shaking her voice. "Is it really you?" James, now a strong young man, stood protectively in front of his mother, his eyes narrowing as he sized up the stranger who had just walked into their lives. "Who are you?" James demanded, his voice firm but cautious. He didn't remember much about his father, but he knew the pain his absence had caused. The thought of someone returning now, claiming to be Michael, stirred anger deep within him. Michael's eyes filled with guilt as he looked at his son, now grown. He knew he had to face the consequences of the choices he had made. "James, I know you don't remember me well, but I am your father," he said softly, his voice trembling. "I was wrong to leave you all behind. I thought I was doing what was best for our family, but I see now how much I've hurt you." Patricia stepped forward, her emotions torn between love and betrayal. She could feel the weight of the years of struggle without him pressing down on her, but also the warmth of their memories together resurfacing. "Why, Michael? Why did you leave us for so long? We thought you were dead. How could you do this?" Michael dropped to his knees, the burden of his shame too heavy to carry any longer. "I was selfish, Patricia. I got caught up in the city life, the wealth, and the dreams of living a better life without the pain of our struggles. But I was wrong. I've been haunted every day by the thought of you and the children. And when I realized I couldn't escape my past, I knew I had to come back, even if it was too late." James's heart pounded in his chest, torn between anger and the yearning to know the father he never had. He looked to his mother, seeing the tears in her eyes as she stood before the man who had once been her world. "We survived without you," James finally said, his voice cracking with the weight of his emotions. "Mama did everything to keep us alive. Mary and I. We didn't need you then, and I don't know if we need you now." Michael's eyes brimmed with tears as he looked at his son and wife. "I know I can't change the past, but I'm here now, and I want to make things right if you'll let me." Patricia wiped her eyes, her emotions swirling. She had carried the weight of their survival on her shoulders for so long, and seeing Michael again opened up old wounds. But beneath the pain, there was still a flicker of the love they once shared. "What do you want, Michael?" she asked quietly. Michael swallowed hard. "I want to rebuild our family. I know I can never undo the hurt I've caused, but I want to be part of your lives again, if you'll allow it." The room was silent for a moment, the tension thick. James clenched his fists, uncertain of how to feel. Mary, now older, peeked out from the back of the house, curious and confused by the man at their door. She had no memory of him, only stories her mother had shared late at night. Patricia turned to James, seeing the storm of emotions in his eyes. She had always leaned on him as her source of strength, but now she knew the decision wasn't just hers to make. This was about their family, about healing wounds or leaving them open forever. "James," she said softly, "what do you think? Can we try to forgive him?" James's jaw clenched as he looked from his mother to the man claiming to be his father. He had grown up without a father, and now here he was, asking for forgiveness and a place in their lives. It wasn't a decision to take lightly. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, James exhaled and spoke. "We can't pretend like nothing happened. It's going to take time, a lot of time." Michael nodded, understanding the gravity of the words. "I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust again." Patricia stepped forward, placing a hand on James's shoulder. "We'll start slowly, Michael, one step at a time, but don't think this will be easy." Michael stood up, his eyes filled with hope, though he knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. "Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, James." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the small village, the family stood together for the first time in years, no longer whole, but no longer broken beyond repair. Patricia took a deep breath, her eyes locking with Michael's. She could see the sincerity in his face, but the scars of the past still lingered. The choice to let him back into their lives wasn't just about forgiveness, it was about healing. "Michael, we've been through so much," she said softly. "Mary and James grew up without you. I had to learn to be both mother and father to them." Michael nodded, his heart heavy but resolute. "I understand. I'm ready to do whatever it takes." James, still standing protectively beside his mother, finally unclenched his fists. "We won't forget what you did, but maybe, in time, we can learn to forgive." Mary, watching from a distance, stepped closer. "I don't know you, but I want to try." With those words, the family stood in a fragile unity, bound by the past, but not imprisoned by it. They knew the road ahead would be long, full of challenges and moments of doubt, but the possibility of healing was there, something none of them had dared to hope for before this day. Michael, with tears streaming down his face, whispered, "Thank you. I'll do everything I can to make this right." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the village in a golden hue, the family stood together. They were not yet whole, but they were no longer broken. The story of Patricia, Michael, and their children was not one of perfection, but of resilience, love, and the slow but powerful process of forgiveness. And in that, they found the strength to move forward, together. Moral of the story: true forgiveness takes time and effort. It is not about erasing the past, but learning to heal from it. Families are built on love, trust, and the willingness to rebuild, no matter how broken the pieces may seem. If this story resonates with you or with what you had heard somewhere before, please share your thoughts in the comments section. To our returning viewers, we say thank you. And if you had not subscribed, please press the subscribe button. To subscribe, also like and share to your friends and family. We all have something to learn from this. Thank you once again for watching. Bye for now.